loved this book from start to finish. Honestly, I had absolutely no clue what the guy was talking about. I just love this so much. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. For today's video we are going to be doing my October wrap up. So all the books that I read in October, my thoughts and ratings for them. Obviously for October I was taking part and was a team captain for Spoopathon, which was created by the lovely Spoopy Hall, which I'll of course link down below, as well as all of my co-hosts as well. It was such a fun month. Everyone got so behind the readathon. I think everyone had a great time. So yeah, just such a good month. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read for Spoopathon, and yeah, let's just get into the video, shall we? So I've been watching quite a few people's wrap-ups recently, and something that I really enjoy people doing is when they start off by talking about their least favourite book of the month and most favourite book of the month. So I'm going to start by doing that today, and then we'll get on to the other books afterwards. So the book that I least enjoyed this month was actually a 3-star read, so that's not the worst, it's just the worst rated out of the books I read, because I did have quite a good reading month in terms of ratings. So that book was Blood Orange by Harriet Tyce. Like I said, I gave this one a 3-star rating. However, to be honest, for the majority of the book I was thinking it was going to be a 2-star rating, and it was just slightly saved by the ending. So this one follows the character of Andersen, who is a lawyer. She seems to have it all. She lives at home with her husband and their daughter, and she works in quite a good law firm. However, underneath things are not as they seem. At home her husband is actually very emotionally abusive, and that becomes clear right from the beginning and just gets worse throughout. And at work she is having an affair with another hotshot lawyer. At the same time she is working on a case for a woman who is being accused of murdering her husband, and she starts to find parallels in that case with her own life and how abusive the husband was to this young woman. And basically it all goes from there. This was a thriller, and the main reason that I did not really enjoy this was that it wasn't very thrilling in my opinion. It is quite slow and it is unbelievably repetitive. That was the main thing for me, is that we were just watching this woman go to work, have her affair, come back, be emotionally abused by her husband, have maybe a nice day with her husband and think, no, do you know what, I'm not going to have this affair anymore, I'm going to work really hard on my marriage, go to work, get back into the affair, and so on. And it just seemed to go on, repeating the same cycle throughout the entire book. To be honest, I do not DNF books, but I was so close to it with this one because I was just incredibly bored. I did, however, really enjoy the discussion in this one about abusive relationships, and particularly the idea of men's abuse of their power over women, both in relationships and in the workplace as well. And I also thought the examination of the justice system in this was very interesting, and really what is justice and is it always black and white. I really enjoyed that. Like I said, this would have been a 2-star read if it were not for the ending. The ending gave it that extra star just because finally there was a bit that I did not see coming. For the majority of this I just felt like it was very predictable, but the fact that there was an ending that I didn't quite see coming just gave me that little extra nudge to give it a 3-star read. Overall, not very engaging or compelling for me, and incredibly repetitive. So yeah. The book that I most enjoyed in the month of October I do not actually have with me because I have lent it to my friend. As soon as I finished reading it I lent it straight to her, which I think just proves how much I enjoyed this book. It took me straight back to my days of being in high school and being obsessed with YA vampire books, and that is why I immediately lent it to my friend who I've been friends with since high school, and we have always read all these books together and just obsessed over these characters and these worlds together. And that is Mina and the Undead by McCaw. I had huge high hopes for this book, and I was so worried that it wasn't going to live up to them. I was really worried that I was going to be over the YA vampire scene and that I was going to read it and just not get the same enjoyment from it as I used to. However, I could not be more wrong. I loved this book from start to finish. In Mina and the Undead we basically follow Mina, obviously, who goes to New Orleans to visit her sister who has moved there for university, and while she is there are some killings that start happening that seem to be replicating mythic killings or legendary killings from New Orleans. And then Mina's sister is implicated and sort of framed for one of these killings, so of course Mina has to start investigating to try and find out what is really going on in this town. From the beginning, the New Orleans setting was just my favourite thing about this book. I love New Orleans. It just gives me Vampire Diaries, the originals vibes, and it's perfect for anything about vampires, witches, anything supernatural like that. So the setting itself I just loved, and all these like spooky shops and spooky pubs and bars and things like that. I absolutely loved all of the pop culture references throughout this. So I think within like the first 50 pages she had mentioned The Lost Boys, Interview with a Vampire, all of my favourite films. And Mina as a character I was just so invested in. I really liked her. I think it's because I saw a lot of myself in her. I felt like I could really relate to her, particularly all of her pop culture obsessions are very similar to mine. And I just totally got on board with the whole YA vampire scene again. This one is also kind of more like a murder mystery obviously, because you try to work out who is doing these killings, and that I really enjoyed. And then the final 60 pages or so were just an absolute whirlwind. So many twists, so many big reveals that I did not see coming, and honestly I just loved my time with this book. I flew through it and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out next year. It has been announced that it's going to be called Mina and the Slayers. I cannot wait. Obviously, if you could not tell, this was a 5-star read for me and 100% my most enjoyed book of the month. So now I'll just go through the other books that I read this month and probably just talk about them in the order that I read them. So the first book that I actually read in the month of October was Something Wicked This Way Comes by Bradbury. This was actually a buddy read with Tabitha, one of my best friends here on BookTube. We decided to read this one because it is the favourite book of Matthew Gray Gubler, who, if you don't know, plays Spencer in Criminal Minds. Criminal Minds is Tabitha's all-time favourite TV show, and it is quickly becoming mine as well because she made me watch it. I am now obsessed. Spencer Reid is the most lovable, incredible character. Matthew Gray Gubler, who plays him, it seems like a very weird and wonderful person in real life as well. So we decided it was only right that we read his favourite book in the month of October. This book follows two young boys called Will and Jim who live in a town in Illinois, I believe, in America, and a carnival comes to town promising lots of mystery, smoke and mirrors, interesting exhibits to look at. However, Will and Jim very quickly get wrapped up in a very sinister aspect of this carnival, and the story goes from there. I'm not going to go any further than that. When I first started this book, I really didn't think it was going to be for me at all. Bradbury has a very unique writing style, which I did not realise before I went into this, but I found out afterwards he is very well known for. And when I first started reading this, honestly I had absolutely no clue what the guy was talking about. However, I very quickly sort of got to know his style, and within I think about maybe 30 pages or so I completely got it and everything made complete sense, which sounds really weird to explain, but basically Bradbury uses a lot of imagery in his writing, and he uses a lot of metaphors that sometimes it's not clear what the original thing is that he was describing because it's so wrapped in imagery. But once you get to know sort of like his way, it just becomes so atmospheric, totally pulls you into this weird and wonderful world. This is one of the most creepy, atmospheric, Halloweeny books I have ever read. Honestly, when I was reading it, I was just lost in this other world, just completely lost in this sinister atmosphere that completely got under my skin. It can be very challenging and confusing because of this writing style, but it is also unbelievably poetic. And it's one of those books where you just think he must have spent so much time thinking about every single word that he wrote in this book. No word is there unintentionally. Everything has meaning, and I feel like if I was to reread this book a million times, each time I would take something new from it and I would like unwrap another layer from it. It's basically a book about morality and aging and the battle between good and evil, but just written in the most interesting way. I would 100% recommend it, especially for a Halloween read. I think it's the perfect Halloween October spooky read, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. So next up in October I read Tomie by Junji Ito. This was my first Junji Ito, and if you've been following me for a while you will know I've been dying to read some of his work for a long time now. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it, so I had very high expectations for this and I was definitely not let down. Tomie is a dark horror manga that follows obviously the character of Tomie, who is a young girl who is very brutally murdered when she is younger, and then she keeps coming back over and over again to all these different people, and she basically drives them crazy with obsession to the point that they murder her. And this basically happens over and over again. This is a book full of short stories basically, and in each one the basic premise is the same but it happens in different ways. So going into this, horror manga was not a genre I have ever gone into before, but after reading this I could definitely say I need some more horror manga in my life because I love this. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars purely because it did seem to get like a little bit repetitive, obviously because each story does have the same premise, it's just told in a slightly different way with slightly different twists and turns and different characters. It's not that I got bored because I didn't, it just seemed to get slightly repetitive. The artwork in this honestly is absolutely incredible. I'll see if I can find like even just like that page I've just opened up to right now. It is absolutely amazing. It is creepy and horrific, often graphic. And not for the faint-hearted at many points, but it is also weirdly beautiful in the same way. I found myself pausing so often throughout this book just to look at the artwork and look at how beautiful it was. Junji Ito, honestly, absolute mastermind. It is absolutely frightening throughout. It made my skin crawl. I have seen a lot of reviews that said that this is maybe too far-fetched or like a bit absurd at times because of how weird it gets, but in my opinion that just adds to this crazy whirlwind of an experience the reader has in this book. It just takes you into a completely different horror world and I enjoyed every minute of it. The next book that I read in October was actually a graphic novel and was another buddy read with my good friend Tabitha. We actually both read this at the same time on one of my reading sprints for Spoopathon, and that was Fangs by Sarah Andersen. This, like I said, is a graphic novel, a very short one. I think it took me about half an hour to read. No, probably about 15 minutes to read, but it's a very short graphic novel. There are not many words or images on the pages at all, but it is a love story between a vampire and a werewolf, and honestly this was just perfect. I gave it 5 stars, loved every second of my reading of it. I laughed out loud so many times, like on every page nearly, and that does not happen with me. Like yeah, I'll have a little giggle when I read a book, but laughing out loud, that is the work of a good comedic author. This was basically just filled with supernatural puns. You had a vampire pun, followed by a werewolf pun, followed by a vampire pun, and so on, and every single one was just hilarious, and the love story between those two characters was just adorable. I just love this so much, and obviously it is absolutely beautiful as well. Some of the artwork again is just perfect. This is one of my particular favourites. Pros and cons for eating him or dating him. Absolutely love this. Will 100% be rereading it whenever I need a little bit of a pick-me-up, and I would highly recommend. And the final book that I read in October was Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. This is my first sort of haunted house book, and it is ridiculous that it's taken me so long to get round to a book like that because I am a horror movie fiend, but I just don't read many horror books, and haunted house horror movies are my favourite. So to have that in a book was just perfect. This one I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars as well. We basically follow a group of authors who are all horror authors but of different styles, and they are brought together to come to this haunted house, the Finch House in Kill Creek, to stay there overnight. It is abandoned, no one has lived there for many years, and they are staying there overnight on the night of Halloween as a publicity stunt. And while they are there, they seem to wake up some sort of entity in this house, and when they leave, it leaves with them, follows them, and torments them. And the story goes from there. This book really just proved to me how much I need to read more horror books because I enjoyed it so much. There were times when I was terrified reading this, where I was like sitting on my own in a darkened room and I was sort of thinking, not sure how safe I am right now. Let's make sure there are lights on and let's make sure all the wardrobe doors are closed so that nothing can peek out and get me. I was hooked right from the beginning with this book. Within the first few sentences I knew I was going to love it. I did worry that it was going to fall into the trap of many horror movies that start off so intriguing with so much potential and then the writers just don't seem to know how to wrap it up or how to come to a good conclusion. However, that was not the case with this one. I loved the ending with this one. I thought it was perfect. I thought the pacing throughout was so well done. The way everything came together was amazing. The one thing I will say for this is it does get very violent. So if you can't really deal with like violence and of a graphic nature, I would stay away from this one because towards the end it does get very sort of like, not just slashery, because slashers to me are less violent if that makes sense. This was more like broken bones and gore and things like that. I can handle that fine. Obviously I get like a little bit squeamish, but I still enjoy it as part of the story. But if that is not for you, I would not recommend this one. I also really enjoyed in this one how sort of the art of storytelling and writing was weaved into the plot of the novel. Obviously we're following 4 authors talking about the act of writing horror while we are reading a horror book, and I love when books are sort of self-aware like that and talk about maybe some of the techniques they are using themselves. I just find that whole concept really, really interesting. This one, the ending was amazing. I'm just remembering it now and realising how unforgettable it really was. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, a very close 5-star book. Something held me back, I'm not really sure what that was. It just didn't quite give me the 5-star feels, but it was very, very close. So there we have it. Those were all the books that I read in October for Spoopathon. Obviously, Mina and the Undead as well is not here, but that was also a book I read. And yeah, I had a great reading month this month. Like, so many well rated books. I had so much fun. I was very, very busy, so I didn't get to read as much as I hoped I would, but what I did read, it was definitely quality. So yeah, very happy with my books for October. So that was my October wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it to the end of this video, then let's pop the orange emoji in the comments today for Blood Orange, my least favourite book of the month, just to show me that you made it to the end of the video and that you enjoyed your time here. So as always, if you did enjoy this video, then do please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe for more bookish content from me, comment down below with any of your thoughts and feelings. I do reply to every single comment. I love you all and I will see you in my next one.